So I often receive emails and questions submitted on my Tumblr quite often asking me a lot of advice questions about a lot of different issues. Probably the three most common things I get is anxiety, depression, and loneliness. And today I would like to just simply talk about loneliness. When people ask me how do I deal with loneliness, I normally don't give an answer because I don't have really an answer. For a lot of the questions people ask me. And if I don't have an answer, I'm not going to pull something out of my ass and say, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. I'll be straight out. I don't have an answer. When people come to me saying, Daniel, I'm feeling lonely, I feel so lonely that I want to kill myself, I don't know what to say at times, for the most part, because I'm in that position. And when you're in that position yourself, feeling so lonely and isolated from people, how can you give advice to someone? You can't. You shouldn't. If you do, then you got some problems because you shouldn't be giving advice to people when you're in the same stage of depression, loneliness, or even suicidal for that matter. Sorry. So, for this video, I would like to go through the 6 different types of loneliness. There are a total of 6 types. I'm sure everyone watching this has experienced at least one of these. I've experienced all 6, and I'm going to elaborate on each one of these with my own personal examples on how I have felt in these situations. But in case you guys don't know about the 6 types of loneliness, here we go. First type of loneliness I think most people have felt. This is what is known as interpersonal loneliness. What this is let's say you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a wife, maybe fiance, whatever, and you love that person. And something goes wrong in the relationship. She cheats, he cheats, someone lies, someone betrays somebody, and then that relationship falls apart. So you've had a serious relationship for 2 or 3 years, you love this person, and all of a sudden that relationship doesn't exist anymore. It's finished, it's done. That's called interpersonal loneliness. It's where you crave and you no longer have that intimate, interpersonal relationship with your significant other. I experienced this with my first breakup. I think most people have. If your relationship was serious and you really cared for the person, you've experienced interpersonal loneliness. This is, I think, the most common and the most basic that everybody feels. The second part of loneliness is social loneliness. Now, what this means is that you are excluded from a specific type of group, and I experienced this in church back in the day when I used to be bullied from there, is I really looked up to these people. Why did I look up to these people? I don't know. They were assholes. They treated me like shit. They bullied me, but I looked up to them, and I always wanted to get into their peer group, their social group, and I never could. I was excluded. This is where a person is on the fringes of a group, excluded from a group, or is actively, continuously rejected from that social group or social peers that they're trying to be accepted in. So therefore, socially, you feel alone, like you don't have anybody to talk to. The people who you look up to, you want to talk to, they don't want nothing to do with you, so therefore it brings this isolation of social loneliness that you're alone, and you can't talk about things, you can't be in a social group with other people. I, for one, I am a people person. I'm an extrovert and an introvert, all depending on how I feel, but for the most part, I need to be involved with people, I need to be around people, and if I don't have that, I feel social loneliness. The third type of loneliness that we feel, out of the 6, is cultural loneliness. This is where a person feels like they do not fit in within the current culture that is happening, or they don't belong in the new culture that has recently come into society. I experienced this in my old relationship, because my old relationship in 2008-2009, my ex-girlfriend wanted me to become a skater. Okay, she wanted me to become in the skater movement where, I have long hair, lip rings, and I skateboard and go to skate parks and have the grungy clothes and all that shit. That's what she wanted, and it was a completely different culture than I grew up in. The culture I like is geek culture, geeky things, fandoms, Doctor Who, Star Wars, comic books, all that stuff. That's my culture. That's where I feel in. That's where I feel like I fit in. And the culture that she wanted me in was completely different. It was the whole emo stage, and I know emo doesn't get used very often anymore, but that's what it was. I mean, my hair was down to here. I was trying to fit into a culture that I didn't fit into, and therefore I had what is known as cultural loneliness. You or I don't feel like we fit into the current culture or an older culture that we're trying to fit into because we're trying to force ourselves into it, or we have other motivations for trying to join a culture that we just don't fit in no matter how hard we try. I'm sorry, I can't be a skater. I built my own skateboard. I tried with all my might to get into her culture that she wanted me to get into, and it was terrible. I didn't have fun. I didn't meet very many people because I'm a geek. And for me, being a geek does not mean growing long hair and trying to skateboard and act all cool and have my pants all the way down to my ankles. Doesn't happen with me. That's not me, never will be me. The fourth type of loneliness we feel is what is known as intellectual loneliness. Now, what this means is that you feel as if it can be family, it can be friends, it can be within college, that intellectual loneliness deals with people you feel as if are superior to you. That you're not as smart as them, or you don't know as much knowledge as them. And I'll give another personal experience on myself. For those of you who don't know, I struggle with math. I have a learning disability, which makes my understanding of math even more difficult. I have taken tutors, numerous tutors from my college. I have taken classes on how to learn with my disability, on how to understand math and use my disability to overcome the struggle that I have, and still nothing. When I sit in a class doing basic algebra, and everybody around me is getting A's and getting, 100% on their tests, and here's me, Daniel Sulzbach, who has taken the same class 3 times, spent $600 of his own money, which is over $1,500, to take this class, and he failed all 3 times. I fail all 3 times. I feel intellectually alone, because no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I cannot grasp math. I can do basic multiplication and adding and subtraction and division, that's it. You try to get me to do algebra? That's one of the reasons I don't have my degree at the moment, is because I cannot get into college math. I have spent money upon money trying to learn and getting all the help I can to cope with my learning disability and understand math, but I can't do it. I have tried so many times, it's infuriating. So this is what is known as intellectual loneliness, where you feel as if your family, you're out of sync with everybody in terms of education or math or whatever it be, that you feel alone in your struggle. And I certainly do, because everybody around me, people in my family, they're all amazing at math. And then there's, Daniel Sulzbach over here, who has a fucking learning disability, and who, no matter how many fucking times he spends $500 and gets tutors, can't fucking pass a goddamn math class. So I know what intellectual loneliness feels like, and I fucking hate it, and that's why I'm trying to end the decision in my life right now. Do I want to go back to college and spend more money only to see another F, to see another fail, to see that I've spent more money on a class that I'm only going to fail again? I don't want to do that. And on to number 5 for psychological loneliness. This is the most difficult one. This is the one that most people don't understand. This is the one that, unless you've experienced abuse, whether it be verbal, physical, sexual, you will not understand psychological loneliness. For those of you who don't know, I made a video almost 2 years ago on my channel titled Mr. Repsion Rises. I'm not going to talk about that experience again in my video. However, you can find it on my channel. It's an older video where I talked about an experience I went through at church at age 16. This experience changed my life to the point of where now I have anxiety, I have chronic depression, and I have a lot of mental problems. Not super bad, but I have a lot of problems that resulted from this traumatic experience. This traumatic experience got me to the point of where I tried to kill myself. I overdosed on a thing of Oxycontin. Believe me, that does not feel good when you overdose on Oxycontin and you don't die from it. The result does not feel good, and a lot of bad things will happen to your body when you overdose on Oxycontin and you do not die. My traumatic experience changed my life forever. In fact, even almost 5 years later, I still have fears and trust issues because of what happened to me. It also stems, having psychological loneliness also stems from having massive depression from that traumatic experience. And this traumatic experience can be many different things. It doesn't mean sexual assault specifically, but it can be, having abusive parents, being molested when you're super young. It can be anything that causes trauma to a person. Losing a child, if you're an early mother and your child gets killed, or you have a miscarriage, that can cause psychological trauma. And it's just like when you have depression and people say, you should just stop being depressed. It doesn't work that way. When you have psychological trauma from an experience, that psychological loneliness makes you feel like no one understands you, that you're by yourself in your own struggle. And believe me, my struggle was difficult. If it wasn't for my parents getting me help, I would not be alive right now talking to this camera at this very moment. Because I was struggling with so much guilt, so much shame, so much pain, and so much isolation from what happened to me, that I wanted to die, that I had no hope for my existence, that I had no reason to keep on living, and that's why I tried to kill myself. So that's psychological loneliness. And finally, number 6, existential or cosmic loneliness. This is the type of loneliness which you will see in an animal. When your dog is about to die, or your dog is going to be dying soon, an animal usually will distance itself from its master or the people in it. When I had my favorite dog, Daisy, I love that dog to death, part lab and Rottweiler, when her back legs went out and we had to put her down, a week prior, before we had to put her down, she wouldn't come around to us. She wouldn't come up and wag her tail. She wasn't the same dog. She isolated herself from us because we cared for our dog, we loved our dog, and she isolated from because she was dying. And I don't understand how dogs do it, but she knew that she was dying. My dog Daisy. I had that dog when I was 6 years old all the way up to when I was 14. This is an isolating loneliness that someone faces when they're facing death. I felt this when I was trying to commit suicide, but when someone who's dying, let's say of cancer, or they're going to die, I haven't experienced it in that sense of, I'm going to die. Rather, hey, I'm going to try to kill myself because I feel so ashamed of what happened to me and all the guilt. But this is something that I'm sure your grandparents or someone close to you in your family who's been dying with cancer or something like that, they have felt this isolation of loneliness because they feel alone that they're dying. And I don't really know how to describe number 6 the greatest because I haven't been in that position of, dying with cancer, so I don't know. But overall, those are the 6 types of loneliness. Now that you have a grasp on what they are, hopefully you can detect which one you have when you're dealing with loneliness, because every person watching this video has dealt with at least one, if not all of them. So there you go, guys. Those are the 6 types of loneliness. Hope this was helpful. Hope you guys learned maybe something and you can now identify what type of loneliness you may have when you're going through a difficult time in your life. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Mr. Repsion, also known as Daniel Sulzbach. Peace the rep out and have a fantastic day.